We've heard it from all of our senior advisors, from Pompeo to Grinnell, over and over and over again. China. Don't get distracted by Russia. Don't get distracted by these other actors. Focus on the threat from China. And you see, finally, the U.S. has announced some sanctions on China over the genocide of the Uyghurs. They're working with Canada and Europe.
We saw this play out in the last administration, Jordan. The only thing that gets the Chinese regime's attention is if the superpower of the world, the United States, says, listen, we're not going to let you push us around. If you want to do business with us, as we know you must do to grow to the size that you want to be, you're going to have to play by the rules.
They're targeting two individuals, the secretary of the party committee and then a director of the Public Service Bureau, Security Bureau, which I guess are probably involved in what's happening to the Uyghurs. But let me tell you something. Sanctioning two Chinese officials is a start, but in a country of 1.4 billion people, it's not going to do anything.
Until you start saying your access to our financial system and the assets that move through our financial system, and by the way, ultimately your ability to sell to our citizens, Jordan, until you say that's on the table, they're just going to ignore these.
I flip over, and both of their entities and them are already sanctioned under the Magnitsky Act, so they already had their U.S. assets frozen, which means these two sanctions were meaningless.
So explain. I think it's important to explain. Well,
these two individuals and their corporations were already sanctioned in the U.S.
So it was a re-sanctioning of existing sanctions.
Would you put the U.S., the economic and banking on the table? Or are we not ready to do that yet? Do we have to do a lot more work here at home before we're even ready to put that on the table? But what we're seeing is the Chinese pushing the U.S. around right now.
You got tough words with Russia and tough words with the Chinese. Is there anything backing the words? Which is kind of what Than is saying. And like you said, sanctioning two people in China?
Yeah, I mean, economic sanctions on two people in China, it makes their life difficult. It doesn't make the Communist Party of China's life difficult.
Sanctioning two companies in China, which are probably obviously controlled by the government anyways, and then a couple of people, does nothing. And then they're comparing our issue on racism in the United States, as they phrased it, which, again, I don't belittle the problem. But I think we've made progress. There's obviously a lot of issues the country has to deal with. But we are not committing genocide.
Everybody realizes around the world that there is no moral equivalency between what we do and what China does.
Right.
We have problems. There's no question, and no one should minimize those problems. But to somehow suggest that our imperfection is on the same level as what China does by denying basic human rights to their people is atrocious. But I have to say, this is what the Democrats have done for 4 years. They should not be surprised when they have messaged for political gain inside the United States that we are a racist, sexist, homophobe country that we should be ashamed of, that dramatically has to be changed. Gavin Newsom recently said, we cannot go back to normal after COVID because normal was unequal. And the idea that we have a society that's created inequality on purpose or systemically is an outrage. And so you get things like when you go to the UN, the Chinese then pick up the Democratic talking points.
Yep.
And they say to our ambassador, how dare you talk about your own personal experience with racism and then try to lecture us. They are making the moral equivalency argument because the Democrats have allowed that to happen.
What a false comparison to say that the United States, because of the activities this summer, and we'll all acknowledge, I think we have to acknowledge that there are instances of racism in the United States. That's not a surprise. We always need to do better. We need to do better. We are doing better in some areas we're not. But to compare the situation in the United States with genocide, and the United States response is not to respond back and say, you're kidding me? These aren't even equal comparisons.
This is from the Chinese representatives. If the U.S. truly cared about human rights, they should address the deep-seated problems of racial discrimination, social injustice, and police brutality on their own soil. The Chinese feel emboldened enough to attack the U.S. on human rights, which, by the way, liberals, be careful how you talk about things that are happening in our own country, because you see how it's used by a country that's committing genocide. They say, whoa, you're the one that's having the Black Lives Matter protest. You're the racist. You're the problem with that. You've got the police brutality, not us. Of course, they're committing genocide.